So welcome back. As you can see, I've made a couple of changes to the web page and I've added some content. I wanted to do this before we came back to the video because it took time to add the content basically. You can see that I've actually filled in this left and right div. Now this is showing you the page in Safari because in Chrome I have it zoomed in so you can actually read what I'm doing. But this is what it looks like as a kind of an overall view. And you can see that I've filled in the left and right. I've got a couple of images. I've got some different text. And I'm just going to go through that now with you to explain that, to show you how you do it in the CSS and what I've changed in the web page. So as I say, this is it a little bit zoomed in so you can actually see it a bit better. So the page, as I say, we've got some nice fonts and so on, and some images. Everything else is quite the same. But if we go back to brackets and first look at index, you can see what I've done is, well, in the welcome I've just added a bit of text in a p tag. P is paragraph, remember? So I've added that in there. And then in the div, in the left div, what I've done is I've added an image here with a link back to my page. And then I've put the text, which is a little bit about me, etc. And then in the right div, I've put another image. And then I've put a bit of text. This is about Christchurch because the pictures are part of Christchurch Harbour. So I just thought I'd put a bit of content in. Now, the thing to note is that this page, this image, is actually bigger, or was bigger than the size of my div. I've actually increased the size of the div because of the font I've used, etc. But it's quite a big image. But when you look at it actually on the page, you can see it's actually quite small. And this one's even smaller, and these were both very big images. If I look at this one, for example, when it highlights, you can see this actually is 2048 by 2048 pixels. The actual size of the div is only around 400 pixels in height. So this would have been masking my entire page. So how did I do that? How did I actually fit it into this small space? Well, that's one of the things we're going to look at. So we've looked at the how to add content. So I can add an image in the div. I can add some text. But then in the styles, what I've done is for my left div and right div image. So what we're saying here is the idea of, so let's go back to the page. Sorry, wrong picture. So for my ID of right div and left div here, and then anything of type image in that ID will be affected by this. And what we're saying is we're setting a max height and a max width of 100 pixels. So basically it's saying that the image that you put in there has got to be no bigger than 100 pixels in height and 100 pixels in width. And then I want it to float on the right. And then I've done the same with the right div image. Again, the height no greater than 100 pixels by 100 pixels, and then float on the right. I could set that to be 200 pixels by 200 pixels, or 100 pixels by 200 pixels, or anything. But what we're saying is we're actually saying to the the browser that the image has to fit in this case in 100 by 100 pixels, and the same with this. They look a little bit different in size just purely because of how the image is taken. You know, the actual how the dimensions of the image is, but they're no greater than 100 by 100 pixels. So as I say, you do that by actually using this max height and max width, and we do that in just for the image, for the ID of right div and for the ID of left div. So we're actually limiting it, just as I say, to all the images within these ID types. So that's how you'd actually put an image or manipulate an image within the div. And then in the div itself, I've just got the standard stuff, which is the background color, float. So I've already talked about float left, float right, and I've changed the height a little bit to make them a little bit bigger just to fit the content in. So no other changes are in there. The one other change I've done is for the P tag, and I've done this for the entire page, I've actually changed the font. So I'll put a couple of examples in there just so you can have a look at it. The one that's actually taken effect is this bottom one. This is a font that I thought looked quite cool. I just searched on the web for font families and saw this one. But this command font family allows you to set the font that's going to be used. And in this case, I've used the label P, so for all the P tag on the page will be affected by this font family command. So here's an example of using Times New Roman, and then in this case I've actually used a font family of Arnold Bokelin, and it's of type fantasy. See, this Times New Roman is a Georgia type, but it's a serif font, whereas this one is a fantasy font. If you do a search on font families, you'll find lots of information on them, and generally it'll tell you the information you just need to copy and paste into this bit of the command here. So that's how you change the font, and you can do that for both the P tag or the header tags. So if you want to change the font family of H1, you can actually change the font weight if you wanted to. So or the kerning, or the size, or the feature settings, or you can see there's quite a lot there. So you literally do that by just, as I say, using this command font family. You can do other things within this P tag, but in this case I'm just actually changing the font family. So that's what I've done to this page. I'll just refresh because it thinks I've changed something. So yeah, I've created these images. I've used a max height and max width, and then I've changed the font family of the entire page. So these are things that you can easily do yourself to your page. You can change the font style, the family, the weights, add images, lots of wonderful stuff. Change I haven't changed the header types, for example, because that's a header type there, not a P tag. And it's the same with the menus, because obviously they're a little bit different. They're not the P tag, they're the UL. You can change the font family within any one of these types by using font family. So as I say, that's a little bit more on setting some content in your web page and how to manipulate the styling of that content by changing font families, by using max sizes, etc.